So we're gonna start. We're very late, and thank you to be there all together. We will talk about the sustainable museum and how we become a driver of change in society.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michèle. I'm from the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about sustainability in this beautiful environment. It's amazing. It's a perfect fit.
Okay, and I'm Hélène Vassal from the Musée du Louvre. I'm head of collection management. We can say like this in English. And in French, I'm directeur du support aux collections. That means collection management and including acquisition, deposit, preventive conservation, and sustainable issues.
So it's not because we're a museum, and most of us, non-for-profit organizations, that we have a noble mission, if you want, one of education, one of community, that we're responsible. It doesn't mean, and it's interesting because one would think, because we're a museum, so automatically we're doing the right things socially, environmentally. Not necessarily. So that is why the sustainable development or sustainability or whatever you want to call it, these are all sort of synonyms more or less, has become a growing concern. And in 2021, the G20 culture ministers adopted a joint declaration positioning culture as a lever for sustainable development. And then also ECOM, the International Council of Museums, put together a working group to see how museums can contribute to the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure everybody is aware or and knows about those. Next slide. Very quickly, I talked about it. You might hear about sustainability, sustainable development, corporate social responsibility, RSE here in France, I think, ESG. There are nuances, but for the sake of today, it's more or less all the same. And just depending on where you come from, we were going to talk about sustainability or use the term sustainability today. So maybe, Hélène, in a few words, so we talked about sustainability. Now, how would you define sustainability in your own words?
We try to make a dialogue between each other, and
I like to try.
we try. Yes, just a few words about definition of sustainability proposed in the what we call the Brilliant Report, a mode of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this definition was refined in the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro and defined between three pillars: economic, ecological, and social, as you know. And as we all understand, sustainable development is intended to be economically efficient, socially equitable, and ecological sustainable. And we have to understand that this association transformed the way we understand and act on heritage and sustainability link. On the one hand, heritage introduced new variables and priorities, requiring us to take into account the notion of sustainable conservation, conservation durable in French. On the other, the founding principle of sustainable development with the 17 SDG adopted broaden and upset the field of heritage and questioning the museum model and committing it to profound transformation related by the sobriety advocate in the IPCC report that's called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and relayed by international museum community.
So, once we understand that sustainability is important for museums, not unlike other industries, we're still caught in the middle of some contradictions when it comes to sustainability. Maybe just a quick word on that.
Yeah. We are caught up in normative contradiction and also organizations ones. And this profound change of approach requires us to adapt, to modify our individual and collective behaviors and practices strategically, practices and operationally ones, and try to resolve multiple contradictions. And as we saw yesterday, the discourse on sustainability changed a lot and is now closely associated with heritage. And our museum institutions are therefore responsible for preserving and disseminating collection for which they are responsible. But however, as you can read here, the race to increasing museum attendance, the mass tourism, the globalization of art loan exchanging, what the so-called branding strategies developed by major museums to generate their own resources and their own international visibility are what we may say a potential contradiction, and we will go back to this contradiction between the pursuit of sustainable development and a greater sobriety.
And I guess in this context, we're asking ourselves quite a few key questions. Which are the ones that you would say are the most important ones?
Yeah, we try to put them on this slide. To conclude the point before, we are all driven to put sustainability, as I said, at the center and become more resilient. And so, few questions for all of us. How are the various heritage actors, institutions, civil society, and communities dealing with the link between sustainability, sobriety, and heritage, and with what consequences? What role in this play the museum have in this process? And internally, through more sustainable and eco-responsible practices, and externally, in its relations with nature, le vivant, and the society. What impact has this paradigm on the definition of the museum? And how does this demand challenge the fundamentals of the museum profession and the standards commonly accepted in storage room, for example?
And that's interesting. I don't know, for those of you who were at the Palais Tokyo, when, I forgot his name. Anyways, the director of communication, yes, Mathieu, talked about, the race to records, record attendance, record this, record that. It's interesting, that paradigm shift. We all get those calls from the journalists. Okay, how many people? Whereas, that's not the main driver nowadays. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And that amplifies some contradictions. Maybe you want to continue on that.
Yeah. Yes. Contradiction between the museum boom, what we call the globalization of the museum we talk about here, for sure, and the slowdown, the decrease, the sobriety imposed by the present situation. And we can refer on this point to what we call the circular economy, or the reference, the resources to Serge Latouche, and the question of musée en décroissance, decreasing of the museum, and the reuse, reduce, reconceptualization, restructuration, redistribution, etc., etc. And that raised the question of resilience.
Absolutely, and so that even ICOM actually introduced, or when they recently changed the definition of the museum, they introduced those notions into the definition, and that already tells us that we have started the journey all together. Maybe you want to quickly put it up. I mean, here is
just
it.
A quick go by to the museum definition voted in ICOM Prague in 2022. The museum project is, by definition, a sustainable one, and conservation is at the heart of this approach. And the redefinition of the museum adopted is quite significant on this aspect. It's aligned with some of the major changes in the role of the museum, recognizing the importance of inclusivity, community participation, and sustainability. And more deeper, just so a few and quick example of ICOM France activities around this question and the raising of sustainability involvement of museum in France, for example. And we created a dedicated team in 2019 and proposed some webinar and session about this subject, for example, a thematic around museum credible players in sustainable development, and dedicated more and more subject and a vision about this question, and a coordination of series of web seminar around this question with international ICOM committees, and more practical involvement also to like a calculator for carbon print, etc., etc. And we just emphasize that initiative related to ICOM France and ICOM International. The continuity is the creation of, as you said before, of this ICOM International group called Sustain, and it is really the result of this new approach.
And how is the museum world now reacting? What do you observe? A few examples, very quickly.
Yeah, in France in particularly, we can see that eco-responsibility is now shared by all the players of the heritage factor, and many French establishments have appointed dedicated team to this topic, like at Universcience, for example, and our colleague is in the room, and she can say a few words if she wants, and we set up working groups dedicated to each subject, and for example, integrated environmental clauses into various projects. You can see also how eco-design in exhibition is now important. The extension of duration of exhibitions, the limitation of need of transport, like the Palais des Beaux-Arts in Lille, which is a really very important experience places for us in his exhibition called so-called Expérience Goya, or the initiative of Palais des Beaux-Arts of the Centre Pompidou, for example, and the action plan in 2020.
And what about the Louvre?
Yes, we can have a few words about what we try to do at the Louvre. It's not new. We were involved for 10 years on this question, and the Louvre Sustainable Strategy is completely related to the movement in French museum, as I explained before. And we used Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG, and we try to adapt them to the rule, to the Louvre reality, with main benefits, like we can have some there. And I know that Michèle will develop this for your example about the Musée des Beaux-Arts. Developing, we have, and we saw that with this subject we developed a real community of committed actors. It was a catalyst for innovation, and we have a dynamic cross-departmental collaboration. I mean, we worked differently with our teams. It gives visibility and developed specific original projects, and also very important point, it promotes more sharing and exchanges with other committed museum, I said before, Centre Pompidou, Universcience, and museum on territories. Greener option first, which is a very important issues. We can have around 3 questions. what are our perspectives, main levers and obstacles? Can we move towards more sober conservation? And by changing our practice, but how we can change our practice. And Michèle, you will develop this point now. Just a few way to go by revising conservation standards. You know that for museum heritage it's a big issue, and rethinking mobility of people, mobility of public, and mobility of artworks. And we always have to keep in mind that the question is compromise. Compromise on conservation standards, professional common practices, and consumption at all, as I try to express on this slide. But now I want to leave the floor to Michèle. And Michèle, can you explain us how you deal with this subject at the museum?
So what I wanted to do, I'm always thinking, what's useful for you guys when you come listen to something like that. So I put together, from my experience, I'm more or less at my 4th sustainable development plan for different organizations in different industries. And sort of these, 7, 8 points is really what is very common, whatever the industry. So first, key conditions for success to make it happen in your organization, to me, is really, it's top-down times bottom-up. What I mean by that is you need a clear mandate from the management team, and then you need to harness, the energy and the passion and the willingness for change from the employees. And if you combine these two, it's really strong. Relevance, stakeholder engagement, very important. If you do your development plan in your own little office, it's probably not a good plan. So, reaching out to the different stakeholders, both internally and externally, to really think about what are the priorities, what should we work on first. It's very important. Authenticity, we talked, this word came a lot over the last 3 days. And deep link to institutional values. CSR, sustainability, is not a thing apart. It's intrinsic part of who you are. So it can't be a plan on the side. It has to be integrated in who you are and who you want to be. You have to be vulnerable. You have to accept to say, hey, we're not perfect. We have many things to do, and we have, you talked about compromise, but also we're not good at certain things. So corporations are not used, and I'm sure museum is the same. We're not used to say, hey, we have a problem here. So we have to be vulnerable. And again, small is okay, times less is more. So it's okay to have small actions. It's okay just to do a little step, and you think, oh my God, but that looks like nothing. Each step counts, and less is more. If you have, 20 objectives, you're not going to do it. If you have 3 or 4, these are the key priorities, and focus on the low-hanging fruit, like the things that you can get quickly done. Quick success is very important. Shared responsibility. So I always say, this is every employee in our museum is responsible for CSR. It's not me, it's not my committee, it's everybody. And that's also very, very important, because sometimes people think, yeah, but it's and if you have a sustainability a person responsible for it, people think, wow, that's his or her responsibility. Not the case. I talked about part of versus part from. So again, integration is critical. These action items have to become normal business. For example, at the museum, we've just done our first carbon emission report. We tried to measure it. So now this is not a thing, this is not like sort of a project aside. This has to become part of our everyday life, of what we do. KPIs, what gets measured gets done. It's very important. Sometimes people think, yeah, this is sort of a soft subject. No, it's a very hard subject. You need KPIs, you need key performance indicators so that you can follow your progress. And think long-term, times, be patient. This takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. So we have to be, it's an investment in the long term, and that's, to me, a key condition also for success.
Yes, I completely agree with you about this key condition for success and the little foot we have to do to enhance and to develop our approach and the integration of the full scope of the subject into our museum. So after this presentation of key condition, how do you develop your approach concretely?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that slide. It goes to what I said at the beginning. It's not because we're a museum we're responsible. When you look at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, it's smaller than, you know, some of the big museums you have here in France, but still, you know, 47,000 pieces of art, you know, lots of exhibition space, 700,000 some visitors. I mean, the impact is huge. So we have to take our responsibilities. So essentially, the journey, how is it in a few 8 simple steps? So first, I talked about the mandate, very important. So, you know, we got the mandate. I was appointed as the responsible at the management committee to take care of this. So we formed the committee. Again, that's the bottom-up part. And the casting is key because, you know, some people, I asked the other directors, could you please name someone from your team? Because I wanted to have a representative from each team. And, you know, some people were elected, but then I had a really, you know, eye-to-eye conversation with these people. Are you interested? Genuinely, is this something that you're passionate about? And it's okay to say no, because if you're not, then you're not going to be helpful on that committee. So that's really, really important. I talked about the stakeholder engagement. That's really step number 3. And then, you know, we do the action plan, and I said current and new initiatives. And the current is important. And why? It's because of step number 6. It's because of communication. If you do a lot of good things, but you don't talk about it, it's not to do green or social or whatever washing. It's to mobilize. It's to generate pride within, but also mobilize and influence, positively influence your peers, your other museums, other institutions to do the same. So once you have your action plan, it seems obvious, but the validation is very important because, again, it's not you, the head of CSR, or the committee who's going to execute the plan. It's actually each team who has to do it. So if they don't adhere to the objectives or the plan, then, you know, it's not going to happen again. I talked about communications, very, very important. Obviously, you have to be careful. I always say do first and then talk about it. So, because otherwise, you know, the line is very fine to be accused of green or social, or in our case also indigenous and what have you washing. So we're very, very careful on how we talk about what we do, but we do it, and we need to do it more. We don't do it enough yet. Execution, obviously, and then last but not least, reporting. So it's that circle back, because the reporting will also help you restart with your action plan, go back to your stakeholders, make sure you're still aligned with your priorities. And then very quickly, so what we've done, it's our first plan, 18 concrete actions. And so it's the plan speaks to 5 of the 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. We thought it was important to link our plan to this framework. This is it's a well-known framework. It's actually a really interesting communication tool. It's very colorful and easy to understand, and it's interesting because it allows us to connect us to something bigger than us, and to really have this idea that we contribute to. I always like to say that the SDGs are like the business plan for the planet. So we're contributing to the business plan of the planet. And then also we have, in Quebec, we have the Government Sustainable Development Act. So we also contribute to 7 of the 16 principles. And you seem like only 5, only 7? Yeah, I said, you know, less is more. Of course, I could probably find 17 bits and pieces that we contribute to the overarching framework, but, you know, is it meaningful? Is it impactful? Probably not. So that's why we really focus on 7. And very quickly, I can give you a few examples. I think
at the Louvre we focused also on around 7 goals.
So I just took a few examples. So on SDG 13, climate action, I talked about the initial carbon report. On SDGs 12, responsible consumption and production, we are developing an eco-design guide for our exhibitions. Again, you're saying, yeah, nothing revolutionary. No, but we don't have one. So when I say, you know, low-hanging fruit, start small. 11, sustainable cities and communities. We have a big project to redo the whole scenery. I'm looking outside, looks very inspiring here. So green our outdoor spaces and really contribute to the greening of downtown Montreal and the biodiversity, because we're in the middle of the city and we're gonna hopefully have a great impact. And 2 more, good health and well-being. Montreal Museum of Fine Arts is very well known for our, santé, how do you say, art therapy. So we want to remain a leader in research on the impact of art mediation. And the last one, reduced inequalities. So we promote access to exhibitions, programs, and activities for visitors from disadvantaged backgrounds. Our objective, our KPI, talking about KPI, is 75,000 people coming to the museum over the next 3 years. So just to show you, like we really want to make sure that these people can come to the museum through their community programs or what have you. So I think this is it. Thank you. I don't know if you have quick time for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michèle. I have just a question about the publication of your document related to your plan.
Yes, so it's in translation. We have to do everything in English and French in Montreal, and it's
good for us.
Yes, so it will be on our website, I would say, hopefully by next month.
Okay, great.
Hi.
I don't know if we have time to take a few questions related to the organization. Yeah.
They've given me the microphone.
Yes,
so
go.
Hi, so thank you so much, and I'll try to be quick, for sharing what both your organizations are doing, because they're important leaders. I have 2 questions. Number one is, you talked about the tension of, like, I guess ultimately the financial sustainability, needing more people to come through to pay, blah, 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 blah. All those people have flown and so on, and then this kind of concept of sobriety. Can you give us an example, either one of you, of like a real tangible decision where those 2 things came and rubbed against one another, and what that looks like from your perspective? And then the second one is, your plan is, as you say, you're catching some low-hanging fruit, and then on some other things you're reaching a bit further, and every museum needs to do something. But what is the hoped, like if every single museum had a plan like yours, compared to an industry like mining or, petroleum extraction or whatever it is, how much of a difference is it going to make?
Oh. Well, I start with the first one. Actually, I have a very recent example. I'm not going to name the artist, but we wanted to do a show, renowned artist, and great installation. And then we looked at the price, and then we said, "Ooh, might be really difficult." But we had hopes that this would be a big thing. People would really like it and probably would sell a lot of tickets. And then the question was, okay, maybe I can have it produced, this installation, in another country where the cost is much lower, and so we could halve the price of how much it would cost to bring it to Montreal. And then we said, no, that's not gonna work. That's against our values. That's against our plan, because that would have meant building it somewhere else where I don't know in which kind of conditions for the people. Plus then the transportation of this thing, and actually, interestingly enough, the subject was the environment. I said, okay, no, no. And it was a very hard decision, because a great name, great draw, potentially great, and we canceled it.
Okay, that's a great example.
And it was tough. It was tough because we had we were around the table, and conservation was there. Yeah, but it's a great artist, and and then our CFO, we need money, and and then in the end, actually, everybody was aligned that this is the best decision, because I don't know, as a comms person and in charge of public relations, how I could even possibly think of defending this. This would have been a total disaster. Yes. And in terms of impact, again, maybe it's small in the bigger scheme of things, but for us it makes a difference. That's why you have to measure, and each little step will go to some. Because if everybody says, yeah, but if I do it, if I take my bike or the bus instead of the car, it's not going to make a big difference. But if everybody thinks like that, we're never gonna make it happen. So it's the little things, the little steps that lead to something. I strongly believe that's the way it's going to work. And each organization, each individual and each organization has to participate. There is no planet B. So I strongly believe in it.
The point is also the question of mediation, the question how we speak about this subject to our public. So it's really a big issue too. I'm trying to find an example, the best example for the Musée du Louvre, as you know, the big museum in the world. We have 9 million people a year of audience, so it's a huge amount of audience and public. And our president, Laurence Descartes, decided to reduce the jauge, I don't know how to say in English, jauge du public, capacity. Yeah, fewer people a day. And so we are around 30,000 people a day and no more. And it was a big decision saying no for the quality of visits, for the impact. We decide to lower the capacity of the museum. So we don't need more audience at all.
From me, it's basically more like a comment to this discussion before. I think the role of institutions is more communicating values about sustainability than having a real impact. So it's I understand because the impact is so small, as Juliette said, that compared to the energy industry, it's nothing. But the values you communicate are big, really, really huge.
I disagree with you, because if you do that, the danger is that then you're not taking seriously, because people will ask, so that's great, you have this great exhibition, you talk about a sustainability. And what do you do?
But I say you do it, but the thing that you are doing it is more about communicating values than the actual impact of yours.
But the question is what
you
are measuring by
we should
impact. What do we mean by impact? If we are taking in account only the energy impact and the food carbon print impact, yes. I do agree with you. But if we're taking into account all the other impacts, and that's why it's so important to keep in mind the SDGs, because the SDGs are very opened. I
absolutely
don't know
agree.
How to say.
Absolutely agree.
You understand what we mean?
Well, because I give you an example. If you talk environment, I agree. Obviously, yes. Even though eco-conception and bringing in those artworks from all over the world has a huge impact. But think about internally. To me, sustainability starts at the very heart of your organization. We've just launched our very first employee survey to understand how do people actually feel. Are you well? This is sustainability, and that's a huge impact.
Yeah, that I agree with. No, I meant environmental impact.
Okay, yeah. And see, that's the problem of the semantics. Yeah. A lot of people think sustainability is environmental.
Yeah,
which is not.
You are
sustainability is
but
everything.
I said I'm responding to the discussion before, and Juliette asked about that. Yeah, with that I agree. No, I meant environmental, because we are talking about the energy sector and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Hélène. It was a pleasure to do this with you. And sorry for the improvisation.